Hello, and welcome to the Romancing in Paris podcast. I'm your host, Lily Heise. In this podcast, we'll be traveling around the city as I pick out my top romantic spots per arrondissement. You don't have to visit these places only as a couple. Exploring them can be the expression of your own love of Paris. Are you ready to get romancing in Paris? In this episode of Romancing in Paris, we meander a little to the southeast and into the 12th arrondissement. Found in a wedge between the 11th and 20th arrondissements and the Seine River, the very east of the district is covered by the vast Bois de Vincennes woods. The 12th arrondissement might at first seem somewhat sleepy. However, it is actually dotted with many discreet surprises, including one of Paris's best food markets, a number of quirky historic sites, excellent restaurants, and one of the best places in the whole city for a unique stroll. This is where we'll be headed today. Grab your chérie, we're going to the Coulée Verte René-Dumont. Also known as the Promenade Plantée, the Coulée Verte René-Dumont runs atop an abandoned railway that extends from just east of the Opéra Bastille all the way out to the edge of Paris. A highlight of it is the stretch closest to Place de la Bastille, which exists above and below a large aqueduct of the former railway line. The space beneath the arches has been converted into a series of art galleries and design shops called the Viaduc des Arts. My first apartment in Paris was located just up the street from one of the staircases which leads up to the promenade, so I've always had a soft spot for it. Now that I live up in Montmartre, in the north of Paris, I sadly don't visit it nearly as much as I'd like. However, last year I had a chance to rediscover it in a unique way, when the promenade was suggested as one of the topics for my collection of short stories about Paris during the pandemic. There's Only One Paris, Tales for Our Times. Since I wrote about it in detail for the book, I thought I would do something a little different for this episode. I'll be reading a descriptive extract about the promenade from the chapter focused on it, which is entitled Ratatouille at the Promenade Plantée and the Viaduc des Arts. It's seen from the perspective of a certain Yannick. The first passage is his description of the site and its history, and the second is when he's gone up to the promenade in search of something and encounters a cool gardener instead. I also chose to read these passages as it adds a touch of romance. So here we go. In front of Yannick was a towering wall of glass, set within a colossal brick archway. He was at the Viaduc des Arts. In the mid-19th century, a vast network of rail lines was created in and around Paris. Some were built for intercity travel, others to transport suburban commuters in and out of the city centre. Certain sections of the latter are still in use. Nevertheless, when the RER suburban train network was developed in the 1960s, the tunnels for it were dug under the city's streets. Most of its above-ground tracks within the city limits were then phased out. Over the past few decades, parts of these have been rehabilitated, starting with an impressive 1.5-kilometer-long viaduct located just east of Place de la Bastille. In the late 1980s, an urban garden and walkway was created atop the viaduct's 64 vaults, while the spaces beneath each arch were encased in huge panels of glass. These attractive spaces were then designated for businesses in the arts, from artisanal workshops to innovative design boutiques. A beautiful example of architectural preservation and repurposing, it was the inspiration for other similar projects around the world, including the High Line in New York City. And now for the second part. The gardener deftly maneuvered through the tall shoots of bamboo, and soon they were on the Coulée Verte René-Dumont. Also known as the Promenade Plantée, it was the walkway found above the viaduct. It was like a secret garden that Paris was hiding in plain sight. High above the street and removed from the noisy traffic, the promenade was a lovely green space filled with trees, budding bushes, hedges, and a profusion of different varieties of flowers. In some sections, there were trellises adorned with climbing roses. In other areas, there were groves of bamboo, whose shoots were so tall they bent in a curved archway, like where the mismatched pair had just exited. Ignoring whether Yannick was following or not, the gardener turned right out of the bamboo grove. Yannick brushed the leaves and dirt off his suit pants, readjusted his slim-fitting dress shirt, and marched after her. At the end of the bamboo archway, they reached a section which had an elongated water pool and fountain. Beyond this, Margot, the gardener, led Yannick over a small footbridge and past a grassy area where a few people were reading or taking in the sun. The beautiful and tranquil walkway was quite popular with the locals of eastern Paris. As Yannick scuttled after Margot, he noticed all kinds of people: walkers, joggers, kids eating ice cream, little old ladies strolling very slowly, huddling lovers, bird watchers, and a group of school kids singing their hearts out. "It's so pretty up here," said Yannick, taking in their surroundings. "I don't come up to the promenade often." "It's a great place to work," she replied. "It really feels like a completely different world up here, like it's been touched by a more celestial or heavenly spirit compared to the busy city down below." "I guess that's thanks to you and the other gardeners," Yannick complimented sweetly. "It's really all nature's doing," said Margot modestly. "We just give it a small helping hand." The walkway's route took them through building complexes and even through a couple of tunnels. From up here, one could see Parisian buildings, their rooftops and chimneys, from a very different and very unique vantage point. This part of the promenade would be perfect for a romantic stroll, thought Yannick, sneaking a peek at Margot out of the corner of his eye. No, he scolded. He had to concentrate on the issue at hand. Oh la la, romancing on the Coulée Verte. Pick up a copy of There's Only One Paris if you'd like to know what happens next. Either way, you're bound to agree with Yannick that the promenade is perfect for a romantic stroll.
We'll be right back with Romancing in Paris after a word from our sponsors. And now, back to Romancing in Paris.
Before or after strolling on the top part of the promenade, I recommend you also walk along the street level to peer in the windows or browse the artisanal shops and galleries. Also, if you would like to do a picnic on the promenade, you could start your outing at the wonderful Marché d'Aligre, found nearby. The vibrant neighborhood market is a fantastic place to discover French market culture, but also to pick up some picnic supplies. The market overflows from a historic hall, Le Marché Beauvais, and into the surrounding streets. Once your supplies are acquired, it's only a short walk to the Coulée Verte. You can enjoy your market finds on one of those romantic benches I mentioned, or the walkway also leads to a small park with lawns, the Rue Paul Pernier Garden, where you can lay down a blanket. As I mentioned before, the promenade is just part of the refurbished former train lines of Paris, which are called the Petite Ceinture, and some of these run along near the edge of Paris once you reach the end of the promenade. Or you can carry on your stroll into the Bois de Vincennes, another great place for a picnic, and another top romantic place of mine in the 12th district. It has a number of romantic features, so there are good chances we'll visit it in another episode of the podcast. In the summer, you might also like to take a detour to Rémo, one of the oldest existing ice cream makers in Paris, founded by an Italian family of ice cream makers in 1947 at 59 to 63 Boulevard de Rouilly. They do takeaway, or you can sit and enjoy their delicate glace sur place at their tea salon. Lastly, midway along the promenade is Ground Control, a sprawling complex occupying former train yard buildings, which has a hip food court, funky seating, bars, and other spaces where they hold a variety of events from artisanal markets to yoga. So much romancing! The promenade is perfect for a short or long outing. No matter how long you spend here, you're surely going to enjoy a wonderful romantic moment with your chérie. Thank you for listening to this latest episode of Romancing in Paris. If you enjoyed it, please subscribe. That way you won't miss the next episode. I also am very, very grateful for any ratings or reviews you might leave. If you would like to discover more romantic places in the district, see my website Je t'aime me neither for my guides to the top romantic spots per arrondissement. This podcast was produced by Paris Underground Radio. Check out their website if you're interested in listening to more great podcasts on Paris, including my other podcast, Paris Cachée, which explores even more lesser-known and hidden places in the city. In the meantime, happy romancing in Paris.